Here I've got a dry compost pile. A week or two ago it was very moist. I had a lot of stuff in it, and I put meat and different things in it, and I had this cover over top of it, but now I've let it go dry, let the ants eat the maggots and worms and things. It's still moist underneath, and you can see this. Got a lot of little ants in here. Watch this. Okay, so I got a lot of little ants making holes and tunnels, so I don't gotta turn this compost. They're just living in here. It is moist underneath, you can see that. This is actually fairly moist right there. About as moist as coffee grounds. And there are a lot of coffee grounds in here, about 5 gallons worth you could get from your local coffee shop. Just look at them ants. Adding protein to the pile too, and they're eating stuff, taking stuff away, but they're adding to it, adding life in there. And I was saying that there were maggots in here. Oh, there's some meat, and I've covered it with char. I can smell it now, but that char and soil mix has really covered it up. And you know, I had things that were frozen that I stuck in here just to suck up the ambient moisture. I stuck these charred logs in. You know, I've been putting sticks, and you see a lot of roly-polies in this type of a dry compost salad type thing. See tons of roly-polies, and you can still see some maggots and stuff in there, but there are also black soldier fly larvae, and you see that it's still moist in here, but I've covered it up with dry material. So what happens is the black soldier fly larvae kill out the maggots, the flies, and see, those things are actually helpful. I dripped out some meat juice that I was bringing out here, and it spilled in my waterway, and then I had all these maggots growing up, just coming up out of the ground like crazy. And so what I did is I pushed all that soil aside with all the maggots in it, and then I just chopped them up with this broom basically. And so all this is filled with thousands of maggots, and I'm gonna use that. Right here I've got a urine bucket, but then I'll have another dry compost. And basically I was just pulling weeds, stick them in here in this black trash can, letting the heat of the sun bake it, and this is cooked down a quarter of the way already. It was full the other day. So yeah, it's cooking it down, trying to figure out some different things that are good for a dry climate. And what I've done here is I've planted buckwheat in with elderberries, which are moist loving plant, but the symbiosis of the mycorrhizal connection in the roots, the fungal connection of the fungi attached to the buckwheat plants here, and the fungal pathways made by the mycorrhiza that come off the elderberry, they are interconnected and they pass nutrients back and forth. So while these plants might not need nitrogen, they provide a very good supplementation of that nitrogen. So they actually are legumes, and they fix nitrogen. They're nitrogen fixers. So what that means is they have bacteria on a node of their root, and since they don't need all of that nitrogen, they pass it through the mycorrhizal connection, the hyphal pathways in the fungi, and pass them to the other plants. And here you could just make different waterways from where you have drainage off of your driveway or whatever, and going deep into the soil. And it will take work, but you work in char and nutrients into that char and the soil, and make these little pods basically of nature. So they're basically, you're making little garden beds, but they're just little oases in this habitat that you're putting them into. Another good thing is this plant has died, but it's an indicator for me, and it was an early indicator that there was this problem. I should have figured it out. It's manganese deficiency, but because there's a manganese deficiency, the insects were attracted to the plant, because insects do not, they're not attracted to healthy plants because they have a weak digestive system. But see, this is planted right next to my cherry tree. You can see right here, after this plant, this Brussels sprout, started showing signs of manganese deficiency, and then it was starting to get eaten, then this cherry tree started showing manganese deficiency, and all of a sudden I've got bugs eating these leaves, but only in the spots where there's deficiency. It's telling me that that is what this plant needs. So what I'm gonna do is there's already manganese in this soil. There's already nutrients and minerals in this soil, and I have a good amount of biodiversity, so we can have exchange from legume plants to other plants, from you know, different beneficial plants to the garden. They can pass through the fungal connections in the roots to my other trees and plants and stuff. But you see also, problems can pass through that way. Disease can pass through that way. And it's good to have indicator plants, and it's good to have these things, because I should have known earlier. I should have been on it earlier to amend these plants. Now, I did start about 2 weeks ago this blend, which is a blend of just pulled weeds, and I know this is a toilet seat, but there's no turds in there. It's water, weeds, and leaf mold, and it's just been sitting anaerobically for 2 weeks, right? And so that is a great fertilizer. I can dilute it 10 to 1, and it's exactly what the ground is needing, because this came from this area, and those plants were pulling up everything that's needed, everything that they could get a hold of manganese, and put it into those plants. And then I'm taking that and putting it back into liquid concentration and spreading that over the plants. I'm doing a similar thing with that dry compost. I'm gonna try to maybe make it a nice mulch. It'll have enough moisture in it to be somewhat good compost, and somewhat aerated too, because it's a lot of high carbon, and high nitrogen at the moment material, but it's trapped in its own moisture. So the idea is to heal the soils, cover the soils. Cover the soils, and that's how you heal the soils. Because you can have dry on top, but when it's dry on top and it's covered, it's moist underneath. You see this? That's just great. And a lot of it too is because the humic acid and those different acids that are from the breakdown of compost, they penetrate in the soil and they make the abiotic parts of the soil, the sand, silt, and clay, biotic by putting carbon, allowing carbon to infiltrate their different crevices and stuff, and to join alongside them basically. So what I'm going to do though, because I have a manganese deficiency, I really want to kick and I want to kickstart the fungal pathways in my garden. So I need to add 5 pounds of sugar to this garden, and that should kickstart the fungal connections that need to be made that maybe have gotten weak over the winter.